Buddy. Yeah, I'm Jim Karinji, professor here at the School of Public and Community Health Sciences. Do a few different things. One of my favorite things to do is work with doctoral students. So I have the pleasure of being B-Rad Applegate's advisor. So just to tell you a little bit about B-Rad, he got his BA in philosophy here at the University of Montana. Some of you who have been around as long as I have might know Professor Borgman, who was pretty well known in philosophy, B-Rad, and he were quite connected. He had a lot of good things to say about B-Rad. He also got a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Montana State University, and then a Master of Public Health and Community Health Prevention Sciences. Now we're very lucky to have him in the doctoral program here. He's currently a disease intervention specialist, working full time on many important issues here in public health in Missoula County, the surrounding areas. Some really cool things going on right now in terms of the CDC helping out with some efforts that B-Rad was instrumental in being a part of. One of the things I'm most impressed about with B-Rad is that he's able to do all of those things and be a doctoral student and excel at that. So maybe one of the reasons is that he also is able to find balance in his life. I don't think you mind me telling you that he's also a musician and an avid skier. So B-Rad, I will say, pray for snow, and I'll hand it over to you. We're really lucky to have you today.
Well, thanks, Jim. Thanks for the kind words and the nice introduction. And yeah, definitely the snow. We need the snow this winter. So now that everyone's daydreaming about powder turns, I'll try to redirect your focus back to the subject matter. So I'm presenting. This is one of three seminars that I'll present as part of my doctoral program. This is the first of the three, and that's where I tell you what's up with my research plan, what I hope to do. A lot of the stuff is already in progress. I'll be back on November 10th presenting the second of those three times, and that second presentation is a research update. So with that in mind, I do have a lot of data available that's been analyzed and is just about ready to start disseminating. And I'm going to not present that today. I'm going to save all that for November 10th. So mark your calendars. The title of this is Advancing Understanding of Lived Experience of Unhoused People to Reduce Social Stigma and Promote Community Health, a theoretically guided photo voice study. So the first thing to do is to just kind of think about, in this type of research, the microscope. When I went to a science class in primary school, I was going to look at slides, and the first thing we did was look at the microscope and look at the different parts of the microscope and understand that which we're going to look at all of the information that we're trying to take in. And in this type of research, the researcher is absolutely part of that microscope, the research team, the community. So you'll hear more about this in later on in the presentation. But one thing that's really important for me to do is to just check in on, positionality. So I'm a white male, cisgender. I have some lived experience being unhoused. Jim mentioned that I have a skiing habit, and during some of my ski bum days, I would do what I had to do to scrape by, living in someone's unfinished basement, selling my plasma so I could make the minimal payment to contribute toward something in the household. And I'd go skiing every day. And I acknowledge that that experience is unique and quite a bit different than what a lot of people who are living unhoused is like. So I want to just make sure to acknowledge my experience, where I'm coming from, what I've done, and also put that aside so that I can, separate that from the information that we're trying to learn. Moving forward, the dissertation, for those of you who don't know, a dissertation at the University of Montana in this department has three aims, where we come up with three aims that tie together using the National Institute of Health format. So these aims got approved by my committee, and this is what I'm setting out to do. Aim number one is to literature review, a scoping review of methodological and theoretical approaches taken to advance the understanding and lived experience of unhoused adults ages 18 years and older. And that leads to aim two, which is to use a community-based participatory research approach and theory-guided photo voice methods to characterize quality of life among unhoused adults living in Missoula, Montana. And the third aim, when we go through this, it'll make more sense how these tie together. But the third aim is pattern recognition is really important to one of the theories I'm using. So to recognize patterns of the transformative impact of the research process on the photo voice co-researchers to extend health as expanding consciousness from a nursing focus theory to a public health focus theory. So what's going on here in Missoula? So there are people that live in Missoula, and not everyone is fortunate enough to have a house, a physical structure over their head to live in. So everyone's probably heard the word homeless, and that word does come up as it's used in direct quotes, and a lot of people are comfortable with that term. I'm shifting a little bit of the language from homeless to houseless. And the reason for that is people may have a home anywhere. When I was young, I was told that home is a place that's filled with love, and anywhere could be home. Someone could be at home anywhere. And I don't want to devalue that. I also want to acknowledge that there are basic needs for food, water, shelter, and some people might be at home in a place without the physical shelter. And so houseless is a specific term that refers to someone who lacks that stable physical structure. So 770,000 or 23 per 10,000 people in the United States experience homelessness, according to a point in time estimate for a single night in 2024. And that's the highest ever recorded number of people being unhoused for one night. And that's in the United States, that's national. And all people that experience houselessness increased a little over 19% between 2007 and 2024. And there was an 18.1% increase between 2023 and 2024. 2,000 or 18 per 10,000 people in Montana experience houselessness in 2024. That's just about 75% between 2007 and 2024 is the increase in people experiencing houselessness, which is quite a bit larger than the national increase of 19.2%. And there was a 7.8% decrease between 2023 and 2024. So still overall a big increase, and it looks like things have started to tip back a little bit. So Missoula County has a population of a little over 117,000. This is all Missoula County data. We're looking at a 67% employment rate. There are 4,816 employer establishments in town, a little over 58,000 housing units. The median household income is $74,000. 47.5% of the population has a bachelor's degree or higher. 6.6 without healthcare coverage. I saw that number and I go, because that seems a little lower than I would expect. But that's what the Census Bureau data reported. So there you have it. Between January 1 and December 31, 2023, more than 850 people experience houselessness in Missoula County. And I bet that count is also low. So for people in Missoula, you've probably heard of the Johnson Street Shelter. For those people that are not from here, that are logging on today, thanks for being here. And this is no longer a shelter. Like as of the 2nd of this month, they shut their doors down. And there's a history of a timeline that I'm gonna share in a moment, but I really want to start off with, and I said I wasn't going to share any data, and I guess I'm sharing a little data, because when you hear about the Photo Voice Project, you'll understand the assignment. And this is a picture that one of the participant co-researchers took to bring to one of the focus groups we had. And the quote that that person said is, all these beds represent empty beds, represent just a small amount of the homeless people that are going to be homeless here at the end of August. And that quote's referring to the shutting down of the Johnson or J Street shelter. I promise a timeline. There you have it. Back in 2020, the city of Missoula said, we need to create a place for people to stay warm in the winter because it's cold here. And in the months of September through April, they opened this warming shelter. In June 2023, or let's go back. April 9th, 2023. Remember, this was open between September and April. So in 2023, this is April, the third year the shelter's been open. And as usual, they said, we're shutting down services for the summer. It's warm enough. We're shutting down. This was a winter shelter, and we're seasonally closing. So 69 people that stayed there the night of April 9th, the next day woke up and had nowhere to stay. So they were visibly displaced all around Missoula. And that new visible overnight appearance of unhoused people in the community triggered a series of phone calls to anyone in town who would answer their phone. There were health department was called, the county sheriffs were called. Anyone who would answer was getting complaints. So there's an academic health department, which is an agreement between the University of Montana and the School of Public and Community Health Sciences. Like Tony mentioned at the introduction, there's some of these presentations in this seminar are from the health department, and that's part of the academic health department agreement. Another agreement is collaboration on research to address issues in the community. And in June of 2023, this was identified. Houselessness was identified as a top concern. September 2023, resumed operations. And then this became a year-round shelter between 2023 and 2025 when it just closed down. In between that time, on the 10th of January 2024, there was a search conference, and that was a bunch of people came together. I wasn't at that event, but 7 project areas to address houselessness in Missoula were identified. So we now understand that there are unhoused people in Missoula. We have some numbers to back that up. And now I just want to talk a little bit about some health outcomes associated with being houseless. And according to this literature review, unhoused people are higher health risk, including chronic and infectious diseases, including sexually transmitted infections, serious mental illness, substance use disorder, and increased and earlier mortality compared to the general housed population. This project is using community-based participatory research. So that means that we're working closely with community members for all aspects of research. And I'm using some language here, and if I say co-researcher, that's a spectrum. And that could be someone who shows up to participate and give us information, also known as a participant or informant at a single focus group. They were invited to come to multiple focus groups, so some people engaged at a higher level. And there's also members of the community, including unhoused people, that have been involved with the planning of the study design, reading articles for the literature review, taking the ethical human research classes, getting certifications, being registered with the IRB, et cetera. So when I say co-researcher throughout this presentation, just understand that there's a spectrum of people that I'm talking to, but that acknowledges that everyone who's involved with this project is, in fact, a researcher. There's not a dichotomy in us versus them. We're all building and gaining knowledge together. So planning meetings started in January 2024, promptly after the search conference. The study was approved by the IRB in January of 2025. So that looks like about a year of planning, and that's what it felt like. We had meetings regularly during that time and came up with the study that we finally got approved. Community members have been trained to do recruitment, facilitate, note take. Well, like I said, do it all. and the co-researchers have certificates from taking their research ethics training. I already said that. All right, theory-guided research. So why use theory? Well, in public health, the development of theory, this article says, can bring us together. And the idea is that when we do theory-guided research, it just helps create a context. It creates a theory, and then, or we identify a theory, and the theory has, certain beliefs and certain assumptions. And when we try to do research and gain knowledge, it gives us a systematic way to understand the information and also make it relative to other information that's understood in the context of that theory. And also, if we have research that's done from different theoretical backgrounds, then that'll give us a good idea of comparing different frameworks together based on the different theoretical orientations. So it can benefit not only the research, but also leading the research to practice. This just talks about, the same article talks about public health being a multidisciplinary, maybe interdisciplinary field, and that's where different theories are being used in the multidisciplinary, multiple theories. Interdisciplinary is those theories start to overlap and come together, and I think that's pretty solid where public health is at this point. And this article calls for working toward a transdisciplinary theory or an overarching theory that is uniquely public health. And I don't think that we've got a solid theory that I could rattle off and identify as a transdisciplinary public health theory. That might be something that happens in the future. So this pyramid shows some big words, but we start at the top here, and that's ontology. Ontology is a theory of being. It's how we are, and yeah, we be. And then epistemology is a theory of knowledge and where knowledge comes from, the origin of knowledge. So based on how we are, how we live, we start to understand knowledge and just figure out, well, what is the truth with a capital T, or are there a lot of truths with lowercase t's? What's the true? And then methodology is a study of methods that we use scientifically to get at a specific question and to learn more and build on our epistemology. And then that informs very specific methods that we use. The methodology is the study of those methods and groups them into categories like photo voice. And then methods are how we tailor that to the unique research project at hand. So that is just a little pathway from how we be to what we know to what we do, and that what we do, it really influences the practice of public health. And it goes backwards too, because what we do informs more methodological discussions influence epistemological discussions. So what we know comes from the research that we do, and then that goes back to influencing how we are in the world. So I think that's the linkage between research and practice. So where are we? Research to practice. Okay, epistemology. How about epistemology for a moment? Like I said, it's a theory of knowledge, where knowledge comes from, and how do we know? So I want everyone to think both and. This doesn't have to be an exclusive club. There are different ways to know, and we're probably better positioned to understand the world if we try to incorporate different ways to know so that we can know more. We can make our knowledge more vast. So some common ways that we think about where knowledge comes from is evidence-based practice. That's pretty hot in the nursing world, in the public health world, in the research world, that we want to do things that have been studied and are based, that we have a body of evidence to support that they're going to work. And before things become evidence-based, they become practice-based or outcome-based. It's something that is doing something and it's resulting in something desirable. There haven't been studies to determine how overall effective it is. It might be new ideas, new practices that are emerging. So grounding into the outcome-based, and there's theory-based practice. We talked about theory at the beginning of this, and theory can inform, not only how we learn, but also what we do. And this is a short list. There are certainly other ways of knowing. So, talking about theories and health behavior theories, this is a short list of theories that I studied when I took my health behavior theory class as part of the master's program here. This list does not include the theory that I'm most excited about to bring to this dissertation. So, I'll tell you a little bit about health as expanding consciousness. This is a nursing focused theory. This was thought of by Margaret Newman. Margaret Newman was born in 33 and passed away in 2018. And her story is that she cared for her mom, who was sick with Lou Gehrig's disease. And that affects the motor neurons that cause voluntary movement. For the non medical people here, we have different types of neurons, and those send messages from our brain to different cells in our body. And the motor neurons are the ones that connect the brain to the muscles that we can choose to move or not move. My hand, I'm doing this with my hand. That's a use of voluntary muscle movement. That's my brain telling the muscles in my arm and my hand to do that. And there you go. And when that ability is lost, that's what Lou Gehrig's disease does, not able to voluntarily move muscles. And through that process, Newman really realized that there were moments of great health. If you defined health as the absence of disease or disability, based on that definition, Mom and Margaret never really got to experience health. So that really inspired Margaret to reframe health from being defined as the absence of disease or disability to health is expanding consciousness. And some basic assumptions of the theory are that health is evolving and it's a unitary pattern of the whole. And this includes patterns of disease. So we live in patterns, and often these patterns are even of disease are present before the disease manifests physically. And then consciousness is an informational capacity of the whole, and it's revealed in an evolving pattern. It continues to become revealed in the world and can be expanded. I don't believe there's limits to how far consciousness can be expanded. And then pattern is something that happens within the human and the environmental, and often people attribute meaning to these patterns. And Newman said in the theory, one of the most important things is recognize pattern recognition. We recognize patterns. Remember, the beginning of aim 3 is to recognize patterns, but recognizing patterns that people are living at in this unitary pattern. And then when something happens, maybe it's an HIV diagnosis, then that pattern is no longer going to effectively work for that individual. And the nurse and the patient work together to expand the patient's consciousness and the nurse's consciousness and help them try to become someone that can evolve to a higher functioning. So every person is in a process of becoming more themselves and also finding greater meaning in life. Meaning is another thing that's going to be a reoccurring theme in this presentation. So this nursing praxis is a combination of research and practice. It's kind of all lumped in together. So that's another linkage to research and praxis. But research takes and that's in the theory of health as expanding consciousness. Research takes the form of praxis. It's grounded in the unitary or transformative paradigm. That unitary pattern kind of gets away from Descartes, that Cartesian dualism, that there's a mind, which is non-extended thinking substance, and the body is extended non-thinking substance. Well, how can those two things ever interact? One can't think, the other can't extend. So Descartes, I think, came up with the pineal gland has fairies in it that mediate the mind in the body. Well, it turns out that contemporary theories have nixed that, and the mind and the body it's a unitary. It's all one. We're all part of the same. The mind and the body are not dualistic. So there's a dynamic partnership that happens between the nurse and the client, or in this case, the population of interest and the researchers. There's a dialogue to understand meaning and create insight that can lead to action. Transforming, like I said, for both the nurse or the research team and the client or the people that we're working with. And it's an epistemological shift from a rational, logical, objective to an intuitive, resonant, and unitary approach. Intuition. We've heard before that research and science is often a blend of art and science. So there's a little art, a little science here. This is a picture that talks about that research as praxis. You can see the bottom lower left hand has a bubble, and it says establish a mutual process of inquiry with the client, and then working through, okay, well, the client's going to explain what's meaningful. Over here, this quote, tell them about the most meaningful relationships and events in your life. That came from a student. One of Margaret's grad students was interviewing people and said, I just really want to ask that question. And that became foundational for the theory. And the first meeting is we get the client to talk. And then at the follow-up meetings, create some kind of a representation, some kind of a visual. Stick figures are fine. But say, this is what I got. Is this what you're telling me? Am I picking up what you're putting down? And that process repeats as the nurse and the patient work toward an expanded consciousness. So aim one is, what do we know about research? I want to do a theory guided research project. So incorporating theory is important. What theories, and then also what methodologies have been used to answer this question in the past. A scoping review, that's appropriate for this because it helps us understand the extent of knowledge in an emerging field, or to identify, map, or report, or discuss characteristics or concepts in that field. And they're useful for knowing what is known about something, including theories and knowledge gaps. So far, I've done a database search, including PubMed and CINAHL, terms synonymous with unhoused, and a list of terms synonymous with community-based participatory research are used. We got 237 articles from CINAHL, 206 from PubMed, 443 articles. After removing duplicates, 419 articles remained. This is a table that I'm working on that just kind of captures some of that information, shows where the duplicates were removed, that we still have 419. And we went through a couple phases and whittled that down to 17 articles that are currently going to be included. The inclusion criteria evolved organically as we were interacting with the articles, and really led to a 3-phase process that have happened, and a 4th phase that's about to. So the phase 1 was just to make sure that it was an article that had unhoused people as the population of interest in CBPR. As you might imagine, there were articles that talked about a new diabetes treatment, and in the abstract it just mentioned that some people with diabetes are unhoused. So that really was not an appropriate article. So that phase 1 was just to put human eyes on the titles and abstracts and make sure it seemed like that it did fit. Phase 2, we wanted to make sure that we had lived experience. And if we didn't talk about the lived experience of unhoused people, we excluded. Phase 3, we wanted to make sure that there was a theory and method mentioned. Anything that didn't really have a theory was excluded. And that's how we got down to our 17 articles. But you might ask, how do you know that you didn't miss any articles that had a strong theoretical component that were not in that initial 17? So this is the phase 4 after I continue to work on getting my notes together for those 17 articles. We're going to go back to phase 3. There were 114 articles that were excluded and 17 were included. So we're randomly going to select 10% or 11 of those excluded articles. Remember, I said we just looked at titles and abstracts, and we're going to do a full review. By we, I should mean I. I am working with a few other students, and they are helping out with this. So I'm definitely grateful for all the help I can get. At the end of the day, though, this is my dissertation and I'm responsible. So I think that you're catching me in this spot of trying to convince myself that I don't have all this work to do by saying we. So just roll with it. If 25% of those articles, less than 25% of those articles have theory mentioned, then we're pretty good. We probably got most of it. We'll just roll with the 17 that we have. However, if more than 25% of those articles mention theory, then, ooh, gosh, we might be missing something. So we're going to go back and pull another 25% of those articles for a full review. So that's what's yet to come. However, we've already got a DAP identified, and this leads to aim two. So Newman's Health as expanding consciousness has not been used in this application. Photo voice has been used. So this information was presented to the CAB, that's the Community Advisory Board, between 2024 and 2025 during those planning meetings. And this, I mentioned health is expanding consciousness and photo voice as options. And the people in the room agreed that health is expanding consciousness was a worthwhile theory to guide the research. And photo voice, they liked that because of the participatory and accessible nature. Aim two, this is the study that is the photo voice study. And we want to characterize quality of life. So photo voice is a participatory research methodology. So there's three reasons why we're using photo voice, three purposes. One is to engage people in active listening and dialogue. The second is to create a safe environment for introspection and reflection, and then to move people toward action. We want to do something. So this has taken the theory. We start with a theory, we understand it. That helps us design study questions, that helps us select methods and guides decision making. And then we gather the research and the data and analyze it, and eventually moving toward action or practice of public health. There are three phases of photo voice. Phase one is design a prompt. You got to ask people something if you want them to answer. And then there's photos involved, so we got to figure out how we're going to share them. And then interview questions relating to the photographs. So the prompts we decided, well, inclusion and exclusion criteria. So inclusion is you had to be 18 years or older and experience housing instability. And that's really loosely defined. Past, anyone who has been unhoused in Missoula, we want to know about the experience in Missoula, which might be different from the experience somewhere else. So past, presently unhoused, or future, someone who might be stably housed at the moment, but it definitely feels like they're at risk for ending up unhoused in the foreseeable future. So if you could check any of those boxes and 18 years of age or older, you're welcome to participate. An exclusion is just anyone who can't behave and engage in an interview process. So that's what we used to figure out who could participate. And then the prompt. So there's two parts to this, and they're going to come together at the end. The first part is what persons and events are meaningful in your life. Do you remember where that came from? Yeah, the theory guided research, going back to Newman's grad student who came up with that question. And then what are barriers to pursuing that? And we also want people to think about, describe the pathway to being unhoused in Missoula. Not how did you become unhoused? That's kind of direct and blaming, and people might be uncomfortable. But what's the pathway like? So this invites people not only to share their story, they could share someone else's story. They could pretend they're sharing someone else's story. If they're sharing theirs, it just makes it a little bit safer for people emotionally. And then that third phase, that second, is plan for the sharing of photographs. So Microsoft Teams was used to record audio and share photos. That was approved by our IRB, and it worked reasonably well. The transcripts were terrible. If anyone wants to use Microsoft Teams, the audio recording sounds just fine, but you might not want to rely on those transcripts. Email photos. So we had phones, loaner phones from the health department during COVID. There were a lot of phones that were bought because a lot of people were hired to work temporarily. And we gave all those phones a box in an office when they were done with their people. And a couple of years later, this project came up, and I got permission from our county auditor and my boss and my boss's boss to be able to loan phones out so people could use those. One of the articles I read in the scoping review talked about phones being desirable over giving people cameras because the phones, like everyone's got a phone out. So if you're wandering around with your phone taking pictures, you look like everybody else. No one has a camera anymore. You look a little odd. So people would get email addresses, and each focus group had a facilitator, at least one note taker, and at least one tech support person. And that tech support person was able to get the computer, get the email of the photo, get it up on Teams. The Teams was connected to a screen in the room. And the showed questions. These are like classic photo voice questions, so we didn't have to do a lot of coming up with these. They were already established. We used them, and it's helpful to understand these correctly. So I'll just go over this real quickly. What do you see here? Well, I see a person wearing sunglasses. There's some kind of dust in front of the sunglasses, blue sky. Just what do you see in the picture? But what's really happening here? Well, it's a windy day, and if anyone has seen the Big Lebowski, then you know what's happening is that his friend Donnie's ashes were being scattered, and the wind, instead of blowing them out to the ocean, blew them in the dude's face. How does this relate to our lives? So now we're figuring out, okay, well, what does this have to do with us? Why does this situation exist, and what can we do about it? So those are the questions we ask people. And at the first focus group, I don't think we really understood the questions we were asking, and it seemed a little cumbersome. I checked in with one of my committee members, professor here, and it really got these explained to me. So it really helped to understand how to correctly ask those questions. Hermeneutic phenomenology is being used for data analysis. And for those people that aren't really into strong philosophy background, this is the iterative process that we use in qualitative research. And the bracketing exercises I talked about at the beginning, that positionality, just to understand, okay, this is where I'm coming from. These are my biases, my prejudices, my thoughts, my perspective, and try to become aware of those so they don't contaminate or overly influence the data. The analysis begins as soon as we start collecting the data. And the data reduction, we term like, I'm talking, and just all that stuff I just said is not going to change the meaning of the overall presentation if you were to just scratch that out of the transcript. So we clean up some of that false, repetitive. You know what I'm saying, I hope. Anyhow, and then with what we're left is a little bit cleaner line by line transcript that we just go through and read and reread and come up with codes and themes that identify and emerge. This was done in a phenomenological way, so really trying to experience it without that preconceived bias, without any kind of a series of questions to look into, and really just like let the data reveal itself. And we're still learning. Talked about bracketing a little bit. Phenomenology also has been described as a light beam without the flashlight. So the flashlight is everything projecting the beam onto the world. If you could get rid of this is like your opinions, your biases, etc., and just have that light beam projecting and interacting with the world, then that's one way that phenomenology has been explained. These are my girls, Vixen and Jade, and they are like really important to me. So I have to be aware that I love my dogs. And when I see a picture of a dog, I get excited. So if we are learning about dogs as an answer to the questions here, then is that because people are really find animals meaningful as well, or because that's just what I'm looking for because of my bias? So there's an example of bracketing and a dog picture for those that like those. Rigor. It's important for qualitative research to be rigorous. We're not just making this up, and we want this knowledge to be used to do good. So we want to make sure that it's accurate, it's trustworthy, and ways that I'm enhancing and ensuring the rigor of the study are bracketing, like I mentioned, auditing, leaving a trail of notes to make document decision making, continuing to understand the microscope, and then going back after these photo voice focus groups for a member checking focus group. And that's when we go to the people and we say, this is what you told me. How did I do? Am I picking up what you're putting down, or am I like in the ballpark? Am I in the right city? Where are we? And I can say that we've had our 2 member checking focus groups, and overall we've gotten really encouraging feedback. It's also important to me to roll ethically. Like, if I don't like someone and I want to really insult them and it's a true statement, I can say one of the meanest things I'll say is, that person displayed some unethical behavior. And I don't want that said about me ever. So made sure to have informed consent. We were able to waive signed consent from the IRB because certain people in the population might not want their name recorded, ensuring confidentiality, reminding people that as a registered nurse, I'm a mandatory reporter. So please don't narc on yourselves. The incentive of $25 an hour, I really want to respect people as experts, pay them as experts. However, we can't pay them so much that they couldn't afford not to show up because that'd be coercive. So we landed, and the IRB approved of $25 an hour, walking that line between being enough to say, hey, this is some money you deserve for what you're offering us, and it's not too much. Acknowledging that people are going to be reliving traumatic events, so preparing for emotional safety and trauma-informed practices, and then really reiterating the importance of everyone that's exposed to the data, collecting the data in the rooms for the focus groups. Everyone's got to have the human research subjects training. I hate saying human subjects, but I think that's what it's called. The ethical training for researching with people and having those certificates, and then also being registered with the IRB. There was a dissemination event at Free Cycles that happened a few months ago. And it's really important as we're jumping to AIM-3 to talk about participatory dissemination. And that's a way that we get the information out in the community where we want to make a change in the community. And this is part of a dissertation. There will be traditional scientific publications as well that come out of this. Looking to get another sort of a world premiere type event now that the data has just about been formally analyzed, because in order for me to do AIM-3, this is where we see, okay, did we expand consciousnesses through the study? I've got to have people that are either co-researchers on that spectrum that have registered with the IRB and made decisions, and see how they have changed while engaging with the project. I want to interview 4 of them because that's about what I have. And I also want to find 4 change agents that I can interview. And a change agent is someone that can make policy, maybe has a grant or some funds to work with, but someone that has some power to do change in the community and see not only how have people engage with this research by being a co-researcher, but also by engaging with the data. So hopefully they'll engage at some sort of a participatory way, a presentation. We got to get the data in front of them in order for it to have an opportunity to expand their consciousness. So that's the transition, the link between AIM-2 and AIM-3. And then AIM-3 is individual interviews focusing on what the informant learned while engaging with AIM-2, and then what they're doing with that. So how have people's consciousness expanded, and what behaviors resulted from the expansion? The methods are going to be individual phenomenological interviews. So to keep the knowledge consistent, I'm using the same hermeneutic phenomenology for this as I used for AIM-2 so that we can understand it all within that context of a theory. Remember at the beginning, I said that a theory is useful as a systematic way of understanding a phenomenon. So to keep within that system, it's important for me to use the same theory for AIM-2 and AIM-3. Interviews will be recorded and transcribed using Max QDA for coding. And again, hermeneutic phenomenology for the data analysis. This is also a picture that one of the participants, co-researchers, took. This is a picture of the Clark Fork River. A river runs through it. Just a little reminder of the beautiful place that we live, the sky. Also see the snow on the banks. It's a little little cold out maybe. So think about what it would be like to not have a reliable, predictable shelter to go home to on a day like that. Just a little taste, a little beauty, and a little. It might be a little. My shoes might get wet walking around all day. I might want to dry them out at the end of the day. And this next slide is a work of an artist who was a former resident at the J Street shelter. And this art was described as if you look down in the lower right, there's like a little tent and it says help. And then there's a lot of chaos and society and structure getting up to this. I don't know what that demon looking face thing is. And that is, to represent like this oppressive system and violence. So this is just a few sneak previews of what's to come on the November 10th presentation. I want to thank, there's too many people to name everyone that have been involved. This has been a huge community project. And I just want to make sure to thank Jim, Lindsay, Jeff, Maya, Cherith, the people on my committee. So many more people. I'm sorry, I'm not going to list everyone's name. Someone came unmuted. If you could mute that thank you. At this point, I do have a few minutes left if anyone's got any questions. Comments, kind words, encouragement.
B-Rad, in the chat, Tess, go ahead, and then there's one in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, great presentation. I really loved how you visually presented things, especially for some of those more conceptual pieces.
Oh, thanks for that. Great diagram. Thanks, Tess. Dr. Quintero, if I had to do it all over again, what would you do different? Thanks for asking that question. So in Western thought, we think in terms of linear patterns. We do A, then we do B, and then we do C. I read a book years ago called Snowboarding to Nirvana. And in that book, they talk about Eastern thought characterized as circular thinking. And the difference is when you're in the center of the circle, you are a radius away from the circumference of the circle. And that circumference of the circle is where the knowledge is. And following this Western linear pattern, I collected the data. Okay, well, we have to collect the data and then we start analyzing the data, which contradicts what I just said. In the hermeneutic process, we do analyze the data as we're going and interacting with it. What would have been better is to listen to some of the team's recordings right early on and start getting transcriptions generated and doing more formal data analysis tasks, because I believe that had I started that earlier, I would have identified some problems, some technological problems that came across with some of the recordings. Some of the microphone technology didn't pick up things as well as I would have liked, and also would have been able to use that to take more of a circular approach to try to do tasks more simultaneously. And I'm shifting toward that, trying to do things and think more circularly than linear. So critical consciousness, Freire. So yeah, photo voice is a Freirean derived research. Thank you, Paulo Freire from Pedagogy of the Oppressed, who was taught to teach, who was assigned the task of teaching people, and really taught for the sake of empowering people, not knowledge for knowledge's sake. But if we're going to teach people, teach and empower them through the teaching process. So how? I'm not sure what you're asking, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Oh, just
How much? How influenced?
yeah, no. They just seem to have a lot of similarities. I was just wondering if if she referenced Prairie at all, but no, it's something we can talk about later. Just seems like a lot of connections.
Yeah, it does. And I've seen articles that have put Freire and photo voice together. That like I think Wang and Burris were influenced by that. I haven't seen anything where Newman quoted Freire directly. What else? We're at 2:50, so I understand that we're officially done. It's people have to go. Thanks for showing up. I understand people might need to make it to a 3 o'clock class. I'm also happy to stick around. So if people have more questions, I'm here.
B-Rad, I have a question. Yeah, for anyone that can stick around, if you can stick around, just you're bringing to public health. You mentioned this, some theories that haven't been applied before. There are researchers, students, practitioners on this call probably haven't heard of a lot of this approach, inclusive of bringing philosophy into public health. I'm curious if you see like a more general utility for your approach for other researchers that might be on the call, for example, looking at the impact of wildfire smoke, or we have people that work at CFAR that are from speech language pathology, all kinds of things. Um, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I think that opportunity is the answer to that question. Opportunity to develop theories that I'd click back, but some people might get nauseous. I'd have to click back quite a few slides to the one where I showed the interdisciplinary, the multidisciplinary, and then the transdisciplinary. So understanding that I believe public health is in a um, interdisciplinary phase where there's different theories and different ways that are being used to understand knowledge and inform practice. And I think that we can continue to strengthen the profession of public health by creating a more overlap with those theories, bringing those theories further and further together. That's not to say that I want to result in like one theory that tells us how we should do everything. I think that within theory, there's a lot of room for different components of that theory that could apply more specifically to different types of research and different types of research questions. But I think that having that overall cohesiveness creates a way to understand knowledge so that we're comparing apples and apples.
Thank you.
All right, B-Rad, awesome job. I encourage folks that if they have additional questions, they could just email B-Rad directly. But with that said, again, wonderful job, B-Rad, and I think that's it.
Well, thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
everyone. Tony, peace out.
All right, see ya.